Good morning and welcome back to another episode of Morning Java. I'm Jeff Hartman here with Alex Stumpf, and we're always sponsored by the Gekko Cafe and Market. Alex, what's your favorite sandwich at Gekko? I'm curious.
I usually go for the burgers,
Oh, all right.
or if I'm feeling pretty adventurous, late at night, like a late night tuna sub.
Tuna
That,
sub.
yeah,
All right.
perfect midnight food.
To each their own, to each their own. But, Gekko Cafe and Market is obviously a sponsor of the show. They have you can get everything on their app. They deliver it to your car. It's pretty awesome.
Yep.
Make sure you check that out. Now, today we're talking, because Alex is here, we're talking about Pirates. We're talking about the upcoming season, which is right around the corner. I know you're excited. I'm excited. Fans should be excited. But here's something that I can't say I was super excited about when I heard this piggybacking theory. Maybe fans haven't been paying attention, haven't been reading your stuff, but what in the world is this piggybacking theory? This sounds really goofy. It sounds like something my kids would do, but explain it for those out there that don't know.
It's almost like a little league thing in that regard. One pitcher's going to come in, he's going to throw about 3 or 4 innings, and then someone else is going to come in and go 2 to 4 innings. I mean, it's basically sharing the workload of a starting pitcher between 2 guys, and the 2 that we know for sure that have been approached, and it looks fairly likely that it's going to happen for the 5th spot, are Stephen Brault and Chad Cole. Chad Cole is coming off of the Tommy John surgery. Stephen Brault had a shoulder problem last year, then again in Bradenton. Neither one is really stretched out to go full length for a starting pitcher quite yet, and they want to get both of them innings. It's an interesting proposal. It's something that the analytical community has talked about for a while, because if you look at starting pitchers, they really start to struggle that 3rd time through the order. So if you can minimize those at-bats, 3rd time to get through, that could really be an advantage. And those 2 specifically for the Pirates, Brault and Cole, talked to Colin Moran about this, because I think he was the first batter to experience it firsthand. He's like, it's 2 completely different looks. They're coming from different arm slots, different sides, different arms. Cole's breaking stuff breaks a whole lot differently than Brault's. That's what they're trying to play on. The batters never get into that group of like, okay, I've seen this pitcher before. I got to watch some film. Now I'm ready for that next at bat against them. They're trying to avoid that by doing this.
So I'm not alone when I say that there's definitely deficiencies in the Pirates starting lineup, and piggybacking is a way to kind of minimize those. Is there another pitcher, you mentioned Brault and Cool, that could possibly join the mix, or maybe even have 2 piggybacking duos? Is there anyone else on the roster that you're just like, nah, this guy could be in the rotation too?
Well, I'm 0 for 2, and yes, and we've had these player interviews. I'm like, so have you been approached with piggybacking Clay Holmes? No. Rats. That's a fun conversation afterwards. The 2 who I think are the most likely after would be Chris Stratton and Robbie Erlin.
Okay.
Stratton started part of last year. Pirates fans got to see him, in action last year. Really worked on, how he left the rubber, pushing off that. Saw a big spike in velocity and spin. He seems like the type of guy who could, go 3 innings. And Robbie Erlin is the same situation. I mean, he was a spot starter last year for San Diego, had more success out of the bullpen. Those 2, it's not quite as profound a jump as like Brault to Cool, but it hits on a lot of the same things, where it's a righty and then a lefty, different arm slots from where the ball is going to be coming from. It plays on a lot of the same things that the Pirates like about that Brault Cool duo.
Piggybacking, is it the next big thing in Major League Baseball?
Maybe.
Kind of like the opener, last year with Tampa Bay, the opener. Like, is this
I
the
think
next big thing?
I think the opener is still more likely to be the next big thing over piggybacking, because piggybacking requires 2 roster spots, or 2 players to fill essentially 1 roster spot. Now, granted, rosters are going to be 26 going from here on out, and we just played generations of baseball with 25, so it's not like it's impossible. You can do it, but is that really the best allocation of your roster spots? It's different whenever you have an expanded roster for the first almost month of the season. That, you can use 2 guys filling out 1 spot and still have that extra bat or those extra arms in the bullpen. But for 2021 going on, this would really have to work, I think, for the Pirates to be like, yeah, we're going to stick with this, and we'll just play with 25 men, for every other game.
All right, Alex, next up, you talked about piggybacking in the first segment. Now we're talking about Josh Bell. In my opinion, every single Pirates team that has been a contender, that has been, we'll call them legitimate, even a threat in the division, has had that one player that almost is transcendent. Some might say Starling Marte was in that category. I think we would all agree that Andrew McCutchen was in that category. Is Josh Bell in that category? And if not, what does he need to do to get there?
I mean, right now, no, I do not say, based on the Josh Bell we have seen from even 2019 and before, Josh Bell is not quite in that transcendent talent. As a hitter, he could be. We have seen that for weeks, months, but it's putting together the whole season, which is something that he hasn't quite done yet in the major leagues. And also really trying to, get something out of that defense, because, I mean, he really reworked the throwing mechanics. I know I've tweeted a video or two about it, and it's a submarine throw now. So a couple people are like, okay, just underhanded at that point. But no, it does look better. I mean, you can make fun of the submarine, but just look at those old videos from last year. I mean, it's a whole lot better. He's going to turn that 3-6-3 double play one of these days, and he's going to be elated. And that's going to be a fun story to watch or to write that day. Yeah, that's going to be the big thing. As a hitter, yes, you can be that transcendent talent. It's putting together for a full year, and also not having your value just submarined by the glove. That's the big thing. Like last year as a hitter, if you look at his stats, considering that he missed, the last couple of weeks of the season, it's like that's a guy who, yeah, he should be an all-star. He should be even a starter for the all-star, but he's not that far away from being, in the discussion for MVP as far as hitting numbers are concerned. But once you've taken his fielding and his base running into consideration, no, he's not in that discussion yet. He's still firmly all-star.
Well, the funny thing is that when you look at Josh Bell, I mean, defensively, he does have shortcomings. That's well documented. And you just said it. Hitting wise, you have a switch hitter. What does he need to do at the plate? Do you think he needs to hit more for average? We know he has the power, but I mean, what is he missing at the plate, in your opinion, that might be like, well, in this season where the NL has a DH, he can be an impact player every single day, even if he's not in the field with a glove on his hand?
I think the big thing is just communicating when he is tired, because last year we saw him slowly start to decline, in June, in July, or July before the All-Star break, whenever he played basically every day. And then he does the All-Star break and you think, well, okay, that's going to be, a couple days off. Well, no, because he has to travel to Cleveland, and then he has to do the home run derby, and then he's got to play the next day, and then he's got to do another day. He didn't get any time to rest during all of that. And it wasn't really until Hurdle said, look, you got to sit for 3 days, and he actually got that all-star break that, we saw Josh Bell return to his form. The DH, I think, will really be beneficial in that, he's going to get a couple days where he's off his feet. He just has to worry about hitting. That'll really help. The shortened season, I think, would be a benefit for him, because look what he did through the first 60 games last year. Not saying he's got to do that again, but it proved that, if he has to, he can play every day for 60 days and be a darn good hitter. But I think going forward, it's just that communicating whenever you need a day off. Maybe take it a day off more than you want to. Okay, I'm going to come in as a pinch hitter instead. The DH, if it does come to the National League in 2022, he would still be under team control. I think would also be a benefit long term. But he's a first baseman first. He wants to be a first baseman first. So that's kind of just a short-term solution. It'll benefit in 2020, though.
So, when you think about switch hitters, you think about Neil Walker, who was in Pittsburgh for a long time. And a lot of people would always say, why is he switch hitting? He's awful on one side of the plate. Is there a weakness in Bell's at-bats? Left-handed, right-handed? Is there a strength? Is there one side that's better than the other?
He's a better swinger left-handed, but I mean, I don't put too much stock into all of that. He still hits well right-handed. It's not like Neil Walker, back in the day whenever he was a pretty terrible hitter, batting right-handed, and it's like, well, why don't you stick lefty? It's, well, come on, then you have a left on left. Is he really going to do that much better in that regard? But yeah.
Well, we'll see. Josh Bell does need to step up for the Pirates, that's for sure, in this shortened season. If they can have a 60-game tear like he had last year, boy, I'll tell you what, the Pirates will do some damage. All right, Alex, last segment here. You talked about deficiencies. We talked about it in the rotation in segment 1. We talk about it with Josh Bell. Maybe it's in the field in segment 2. And segment 3 is going to be the infield. I think when you look at the Pirates infield, especially third base, what is the answer for the team at third base? Please tell me it's not Colin Moran. I like Colin Moran. I just don't think he's your everyday third baseman. Am I off my rocker here or what?
No, I mean, in a perfect world, it would be Ke'Bryan. Maybe not, immediately out of the gate, but at some point in 2020, Ke'Bryan Hayes takes the reins. He becomes the everyday third baseman, and Colin Moran bounces between backing him up at third, backing up Josh Bell at first, and DHing. That type of role. But Ke'Bryan hasn't been on the field yet. And that, especially for a position player, that basically guarantees that he won't be ready for the start of the season. And he might not even be particularly ready for a little bit into the season, which, from a service time standpoint would benefit the Pirates, because that means they have an excuse on why they, didn't promote him immediately and why they get to keep that extra year of team control. But in terms of a competitive standpoint and from developing him as a player, that's not great. That's pretty bad, actually. So Ke'Bryan missing this much time in camp is not good. And it basically leads to Colin Moran being the option at third base, because Jose Osuna is going to bounce all around and in that DH role and backing up all over the place. So Moran, talking to him in Bradenton, he once those at-bats against left-handers. He felt the platoon role really took him out of his rhythm, because there'd be days whenever, you play 3 days in a row and then you get pinch hit in the 6th inning and then you don't play for 2 or 3 days. He's a guy who really, really relies on that consistency. That going to the office knowing I'm going to get these at-bats over the course of the day. I think he's someone who gets better as the game goes on. He can study his at-bats against pitchers. That third time through the order, I think that's whenever he does his best work. But there are serious concerns about the glove. That's the number one thing with Colin Moran. Like, if you look at the bat, it's like, yeah, I can work with that bat at third base, but it's the glove that is the real concern. And he moves pretty well to his left, but not to his right. So you have to really wonder, whenever they do all these shifts, how much does that hurt Colin? Because if he has to make, play 2 or 3 feet to his, or 2 or 3 steps to his right, make a backhand, odds of him doing that aren't that good.
Well, let's talk. Moran is Moran, in my opinion. I mean, there's probably going to be some improvement if he does get to play there almost every day. That's just natural. But let's talk about Hayes for a second. He hasn't been at camp yet. You're talking about there's just a very typical Pirates discussion of, well, let's not bring this player up until X date so we don't have to give them a year. That's always
not just Pirates.
That's been I know, but it was that way with Polanco. It was that way with Bell. Every single big prospect, they always waited, and it kind of always stuck with Pirates fans especially on Twitter. But anyways, you think that even take all that stuff out of it, take out the money part, take out the year of service part. Is he, from a skill standpoint, ready for the majors, or do you still think he needs some time?
I think so. I think he's ready for the major leagues. The real concern is the bat. And he does a lot of things right. He doesn't strike out all that much. He draws walks, and he hits the ball hard. It's actually elevating the ball as he's hitting it. And in Bradenton, he and Rick Eckstein started making strides. They felt like they started making strides to doing that. If that's the type of situation that Hayes needs to be in right now. He needs to be in that environment where he can work with major league coaches. That's where he's going to finally become a major league player. I don't think if this was a normal season, then that extra month or two in Indianapolis would have made sense. But with the way the season is structured right now, if he was in camp, there would really be no disadvantage to him being in the major leagues to start. And maybe you platoon him with Colin Moran. Don't tell Colin that, because I just said that 2 minutes ago. But, so he gets, more favorable at bats. The glove is major league ready. I mean, he could be a legitimate Gold Glove contender one day, if not a Gold Glove winner one day. He runs the base as well. He's coachable. He checks every single box. It's just making that leap. And this season really, really hurts him in that regard, because he doesn't get that opportunity. as clearly as he would in a regular season. If this was a normal season, yeah, it would have been like Polanco, where June 5th, oh, he's finally ready. Wow,
Yeah.
isn't it great that he's finally Major League ready now that we're past the Super 2 deadline?
Yeah. So your prediction is Hayes will be playing for the Pittsburgh Pirates by the end of this 60-game sprint?
I think he'll be starting for the Pittsburgh Pirates by the end of this 60-game sprint.
It'll be some experience for him either way. And a lot of people think that if you're going to have, well, I hate to use the term, a bridge year, 60-game bridge year wouldn't be bad. You're welcome. You're welcome. We'll end it on that. There you go.